Welcome to today's English lesson, where I will give you a suggestion on how to analyze the short story The Way Up to Heaven by Roald Dahl. I will focus on the plot, the characters, the setting, the possible themes, and finally the title. As we go along, I will present both central questions and answers related to the analysis. This is done in order for you to get a better understanding of this short story and, at the same time, give you an even better understanding of how to do an analysis of any piece of fiction. Let us begin. Let us start with the plot. What builds up suspense in The Way Up to Heaven? What conflicts occur? Is there a climax? Does the story have a happy ending or not? Why? When it comes to suspense in The Way Up to Heaven, Mrs. Foster is going to Paris to visit her daughter. The plane is postponed because of fog, and it is uncertain whether she will make it. Finally, she leaves knowing her husband is in danger, but spends a great time in Paris. The reader is wondering what caused the sudden change in her and what keeps her in such high spirits. And what conflicts occur? Is there a climax? Well, Mrs. Foster is hysterical about being late and is terrorized by her husband, who is always late on purpose. He's late again when she's leaving for Paris. The climax, or the main turning point of the story, is the moment when Mrs. Foster freezes at the front door to listen to a sound. She is a completely changed person after that. When in Paris, she knows her husband is in danger, but pretends not to know. And, finally, does the story have a happy ending or not? Why? Well, for Mrs. Foster, the story has a happy ending. She's finally free to do what she wants. Mr. Foster, however, probably has himself to blame for what happens to him. Let us have a look at the characters. Who is the story The Way Up to Heaven about? How do we learn about their personalities? Are the characters dynamic or are they static? Meaning, do they change or do they remain the same? The story is about Mr. and Mrs. Foster, but Mrs. Foster is the main character. Mrs. Foster has no given name or no age. She's just her husband's wife. She's modest, nervous, neurotic, disciplined, oppressed, faithful, unhappy, and suffering. Mrs. Foster is obsessed with never being late, and her husband knows she will be hysterical if he's late. So he's late on purpose, watching her to see if the muscle by her eye starts twitching. She's beginning to realize that he's tormenting her. Mrs. Foster is 70 years old, diminutive but quite dapper, rich, powerful, insensitive, and bullying. He shows no love for his family and has few friends. Let us have a look at some examples. The author says she looked rather soft and silly, had a little flabby mouth. Her face was screwed up tight with anxiety. She was a good and loving wife. But she changes. A peculiar hardness has settled itself upon the features. Her eyes were bright, and her voice carried a new authority. She felt strong and cool and calm, extremely calm, purposeful. When she went to check the lift, a little glimmer of satisfaction on her face. We get to know her personality through what the author tells us directly, through what her husband says to her, and through what she says and does. According to the author, Mr. Foster has disciplined his wife. "Stay here," he commanded. He could drive her nearly into hysterics, wanted to intensify her suffering. Watching her closely, he was staring intently at her left eye, slowly pausing halfway to observe the sky and to sniff the cold morning air. When he knew she was nervously waiting for him, furious that she would have forgotten herself for once. We get to know his personality through what the author tells us directly, through what he says to his wife, and through what he does and how he behaves. And how do the characters change? Or do they change? Well, Mrs. Foster, she changes. She is a dynamic character. Arriving in Paris, she feels wonderful, strong, cool, calm, and purposeful. And when she arrives back home, she feels satisfied. Mr. Foster is a static character. And now the setting. Where does the story The Way Up to Heaven take place? When does the action occur? Which century? The beginning, the middle, or the end of the century? How can you tell? How much time passes from the beginning to the story to the end of the story? Now, the main scenes that form the setting are the Fosters' house in New York, in the taxi, at the airport in New York, and a visit to Paris. And the story is set in the 1950s or 60s, and it all happens within a period of 6 weeks. Now, the themes of the story. What is The Way Up to Heaven really about? Some of the possible themes of this story are oppression, bullying, insensitivity, obsession, dysfunctional couple, unhappy marriage, solving a problem, and free at last. And finally, let us consider the title The Way Up to Heaven. How can the title be relevant to the story? The title The Way Up to Heaven may refer to Mrs. Foster's newly found happiness and freedom at the end of the story. Perhaps she has found the way up to heaven. Heaven is also a connotation of death, which reflects Mr. Foster's faith. Perhaps the title is partly ironic, since it is debatable whether Mr. Foster ends up in heaven or hell. What do you think?